Hi friends, and welcome to Crumbz from Gerard. The reading is from Acts chapter 6. Now in these days, when the disciples were increasing in number, the Hellenists murmured against the Hebrews because their widows were neglected in the daily distribution. When we look into the early church as seen in the book of Acts, we tend to think that the church had no problems at all. We know, of course, and it was true, they were one mind and one heart, and if they had anything extra, they disputed it. But the church did have their own problems, as in the case over here. What was the situation? In a time of the early church, we are told that the property was handed on from father to son. Daughters didn't get a share of the property. Sons were supposed to look after their mothers. But then sometimes it happened the sons didn't look after their mothers, or the sons died, or maybe the widow had no children or no son to look after her. So very often widows were very poor. Now the situation, we are told over here that the Jewish widows were given an extra share, whereas the Hellenist widows were neglected in the distribution that took place in the early church. The Hellenist widows were widows who came from the Greek-speaking world now to Jerusalem in order to pass the last years over here. So there was some kind of discrepancy. So you see, even in the early church, when everything seems to be so good, there were problems. St. Paul also tells us in a letter to the Corinthians, first letter, he says, some people, when you all come to the Eucharist, first eat at home, because you'll come here and eat and you don't bother about the others who don't get to eat. So eat at home and then come here. For those of us who sometimes dream even during the Eucharist and are distracted, even in the early church, we have the patron of sleepers during Mass, as we have Eutychus. While Paul was preaching, he was sitting on the first floor and he fell down off the window and was taken up for dead. Then Paul worked a miracle and brought him back to life. So there were problems, and there is no perfect church. Let us listen to what Karl Rahner, one of the great theologians of the time, has to say. The church is an old woman with many wrinkles and furrows, but she is my mother, and no one strikes my mother. He also says, if you are not happy with the church, you may join any other church, but remember, the moment you join that church, it will be imperfect because you have now joined. And now put on your thinking caps. What is it that you like best about the church?